The bulldozer's engine growled as it tore through the last remnants of my rain garden. Neighbors applauded. The HOA board grinned like they had just won a war. And somewhere deep beneath the surface of that hillside, the earth stirred ominously. If you're reading this, you're probably wondering how things reached this point. It started when I bought a modest home on Pine Hollow Drive, a quiet cul-de-sac nestled on the edge of a steep, wooded hill overlooking the valley. I was drawn to the serenity, the chirping birds, the wildflowers that framed the lot like a painting. What the real estate agent hadn't emphasized was that this picturesque slope came with risk. Water runoff during storms had carved gullies into neighboring yards. The agent brushed it off. Drainage was handled by the builders. I knew better. Years of hiking and volunteering in conservation had taught me that water didn't care about design blueprints. So within a month of moving in, I began constructing a rain garden. Not just for aesthetics, but for function. Native plants with deep root systems, berms to divert flow, and a natural basin to absorb heavy rains. It was work that took me through muddy weekends and sunburnt afternoons. By late spring, it was beautiful. Swallowtails and bees danced between the purple coneflowers and golden coreopsis. After a torrential summer storm, I watched from my porch as water trickled down slow, guided and absorbed rather than raging like it had before. It worked better than I imagined. The HOA at first didn't notice. Pine Hollow had strict rules on appearances: uniform lawns, neutral paint, and no unsanctioned changes to landscaping. But I trimmed the edges, kept the front neat, and assumed they'd let me be. That assumption fell apart when I received the first letter. Landscaping inconsistencies have been reported on your property. It was vague and patronizing. I responded with documentation, signs explaining the environmental benefit, even a QR code linking to a friendly webpage. 2 weeks later came a harsher letter citing exact violations, including unauthorized plant height and use of unapproved materials. I pored through the HOA manual. Nowhere were rain gardens banned. The rules assumed grass and generic shrubs, nothing more. I appealed, wrote polite emails, explained again and again. My arguments were ignored. Then Karen Bradford, HOA president, showed up. Mid-50s, sharp bob, pastel cardigan. Her tone was condescending as she said the rain garden was unsightly, a threat to property values, and a breeding ground for pests. I calmly tried to explain erosion control. She wasn't listening. The citations piled up. Unauthorized structures, small river rocks, excessive growth, native grasses, and fictional invasive species. Neighbors began avoiding eye contact. Whispers spread that Karen thought my garden made her house look worse by comparison. Then, while I was buried in a work project, the board called a surprise emergency meeting that violated their own notice requirements. They voted to remediate the landscape alterations on my property. I came home that Monday to devastation. My rain garden was gone. Bulldozed, torn earth where flowers had bloomed. The oak tree, once a sentinel on the slope, had exposed roots and gashes from heavy machinery. Even my handmade signs had been crushed. A man in a vest handed me a $5,000 invoice taped to a violation resolution notice. They had destroyed my work, my investment, my protection for the land without due process. I stood there in disbelief, dirt in the air, the stink of diesel and shattered roots around me. I wasn't just angry. I was resolute. The rain came in October. Mist first, then drizzle, then downpour. The earth couldn't absorb it anymore. I watched water tear through where the garden had slowed it before. Streams ran down the hill into other yards. The first sign of trouble came at the Andersons' Homia hairline crack in the sidewalk. By Monday it had widened. Yards began to slope. Fences tilted. Mud appeared in places it never had before. I documented everything. Cracks, sinks, collapsing fences. The HOA released a bulletin, reminder, residents are responsible for gutter maintenance. I called in Greg Monroe, an old college friend and soil engineer. After testing and probing the site, Greg looked at me grimly. Your garden was holding that hill together. Now it's a ticking bomb. He explained the saturation, the water trapped between soil layers, building pressure. One heavy storm could trigger a landslide. I compiled everything: photos, Greg's analysis, official letters. I warned the HOA formally. Sent certified mail. Even posted in the community forum. Karen dismissed it all, mocking my warnings at the next meeting as alarmist fantasies. Then it happened. A heavy rainstorm, relentless and punishing. I heard it before I saw it, a deep, snapping crack. The retaining wall behind Karen's home split, then collapsed. Mud, debris, fence panels, even patio furniture tumbled down the hill, destroying the Jacksons' backyard. Karen screamed as brown water surged over her patio. Emergency crews arrived, slipping in the mud. Neighbors stared in silence. Karen's arrogance had undone them. In the following weeks, as storms continued, damage spread. Cracks appeared in foundations. Retaining walls bowed. Insurance inspectors came and their verdict was brutal. Since the HOA had ordered removal of a functioning erosion control system, they would not cover damages. The destruction was classified as man-made. Homeowners who once cheered Karen now faced thousands in repairs. Tempers flared. Online forums turned hostile. Karen tried to deflect blame, but it was too late. I hired Jennifer Cole, a tough-as-nails property attorney. We filed suit, negligence, destruction of property, violation of fiduciary duty, and more. We named Karen and other board members personally. Discovery revealed buried reports warning the HOA about the risk of removal. Karen had suppressed them. Worse, the contractor, Horizon Landscaping, was a shell company owned by Karen's brother, hired without bids, paid triple the market rate. Emails showed Karen saying, "I don't care what some dirt hippie says. That weed patch is going." The court was stunned. The judge, icy and precise, made clear she wasn't amused. Local news picked up the story. Headlines blared, HOA destroys rain garden, triggers landslide. Karen resigned in disgrace. So did half the board. The court awarded me $1.2 million in damages, legal fees, and punitive penalties. Insurance wouldn't cover it, so the HOA levied a special $180 assessment on every homeowner. Outrage exploded. People who once ignored my warnings now faced the cost. Lawsuits flew. Friendships broke. Home values plummeted. But I rebuilt. With Greg's help, I installed a massive 2-tier rain garden, more intricate and powerful than before. At its center, a carved stone plaque, "Stabilizing your homes since 2025. Courtesy of Marcus Taylor. Every visitor would see it. The new HOA board, humbled and cooperative, began promoting native plant use. The neighborhood slowly changed. Workshops were held. Laws were rewritten. People learned. Karen disappeared. Her house sat empty, overgrown. Eventually it sold at a loss. Pine Hollow would never be the same. But maybe that was the point. The hill, once stripped bare, bloomed again. Roots dug deep. The land healed. One morning, as new saplings were planted and kids ran barefoot through wildflower paths, I sat with coffee in hand, watching it all. Nature, respected, had returned. And for the first time in a long while, so had peace.